As each day brings the war closer to her shores, Canada mobilizes her men and her wealth to meet the challenge. And behind the fighting line, another all-important front is taking up position, the home front, manned by the nation's 3 million women. Today, for the second time in a generation, these women of Canada know the heartbreak of war. For the second time, they have become the living link between home and inferno. Today, their menfolk face ordeals such as men have never had to meet before. And as they did at Vimy and Menin Ridge a quarter of a century ago, they face them without flinching. But far from the battlefront, the women of Canada turn calmly to their eternal task in war, the relief of human suffering. And as the total warfare of today has produced new weapons of ever greater destruction, so science strives to perfect new methods of restoring its victims to life and vigor. It was Canadian doctors who discovered that blood, so often needed to give strength to wounded men, could be preserved until required by a process of condensation. Today, in Toronto, Canadian women play a leading part in this latest marvel of medicine, collecting and storing the blood that may save many a soldier's life. And today, to hospitals throughout the land comes a new generation, learning its country's great tradition of nursing skill, preparing for whatever sacrifices it may be called upon to make. New tasks abound for women in this war of machines. Under the new order for general mobilization, the day may shortly come when the men of Canada must be released for more urgent duties. So in a score of cities, women who are skilled drivers of cars are reporting to factory and garage for a 10-week course in handling heavy trucks and farm tractors. Already some 5,000 of them are nearly through their training, and more are coming. Where the loss of precious equipment may bring swift defeat, this is Canada's greatest task, to mobilize her mighty industrial resources into a never-failing arsenal. And on this battlefront of national organization, women fight side by side with men. Long hours today are the lot of women civil servants in the key centers of the nation's effort, of secretaries in the Ministry of Munitions preparing contracts for 1,000 vital war supplies, of financial assistance playing an indispensable part in the orderly administration of Canada's war budget. And behind the smoke and steam of a nation gearing itself to full productive power are women. They are at work in the textile mills of Quebec, controlling the machines which turn out khaki by the mile. Khaki for the battle dress, described as the most sensible uniform ever designed. They are at work in the munitions plants of Ontario, swiftly replacing the machines and ammunition lost on the fields of France and Flanders. And as the urgent need for more planes and skilled flyers brings young Canadians flocking to the Commonwealth Air Training Plan, women make their contribution to the success of this gigantic scheme. More planes are needed, and in her Fort William office, Elizabeth McGill takes her place in the front rank of Canada's aircraft designers. More planes are needed, and in the aircraft factories, deft hands work night and day to increase the output of Canadian production lines. Even in the clouds, woman plays her part, as Helen Harrison, Kitchener's air instructress, takes off to give yet another budding pilot the first stages of the training which eventually will fit him to fly modern warplanes. As Canada looks ever more closely to her home defenses, training camps appear from Atlantic to Pacific, bringing thousands of men far from their homes to strange towns and unknown faces. To these men, the women of Canada have a special duty. For those in need of running repairs, skilled fingers are necessary. To the boys seeking promotion or success in civil life afterwards, women can point the way. While for those who simply want a good time, the formula is easy, applied to the home front.
Ready, Frank?
Oh, coffee?
Coffee?
What kind of pie have you?
Got apple, rhubarb, cherry, and lemon, and raisin.
Oh, I'll have apple.
Apple?
Have any cheese?
Yes, you got cheese. That be all?
That'll be all, thanks.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'll have soup, vegetable.
Soup?
Yes, vegetable soup, please.
Vegetable soup?
Yes, please. Lemon onions.
And coffee?
Yes, please.
Is that all?
Yes, that's all. I was quite hungry.
Oh,
Thanks
good.
very much.
Familiar faces may be far away, but the home front is everywhere. Canada addresses the wives and mothers in city and village and prairie. She reminds them that in every daily action, they have the power to strengthen their country's war effort. She urges them to remember in their marketing that when they buy Canadian goods, they strengthen the nation's home economy, fortify the farmers and fishermen who produce the nation's supplies. They keep precious foreign money in the country for weapons of war. The mothers of Canada are seeing to it that the rising generation takes advantage of every educational facility, for they know that on their children will fall the responsibility of building this new world after the war. And as the nation's health is vital to its power, they make sure that their boys and girls attend classes in physical training, keeping fit for any war service they may be called upon to perform. Remembering that total war spreads epidemics which may cross the sea, they keep their families at top strength in this hour when all strength is needed. Outside the homes of Canada are the organized women's groups, giving themselves unreservedly to the tasks of war. Typical of these groups is the Canadian Red Cross, oldest and largest of them all. From its headquarters in Toronto, it is in touch with depots and workrooms in all parts of the country. Its national chairman of Women's War Work, Mrs. W.R. Campbell, in an interview with Monica Mugan, CBC commentator on women's affairs, speaks to Canadian women everywhere.
In this time of national emergency, how particularly can women help the country's war effort?
We need urgently a great many articles, not only for the men on active service, but also for refugees. All over the country, women are at work in Red Cross depots, but we need every woman in Canada. We have undertaken to supply hospital garments, surgical dressings, and bandages for the wounded, as well as comforts for the men on active service. We are helping the Red Cross of our allies to supply blankets, food, and clothing for the millions of refugees who have been driven from their homes and are now pouring destitute into France and England. We are far from the horrors of battle, but we have a tradition of mercy. Let us do all in our power to lessen the suffering of others.
Such is the spirit of the women of Canada, of the Women's Institutes preparing a new home for the children of Europe, of the Daughters of the Empire raising money for tanks and planes, of the book depots collecting thousands of books and magazines to brighten the leisure hours of Canada's fighting men. And as the stress of war grows greater, Canada becomes every day more conscious of the vital part played by her women. For today, her people realize that whatever the future may bring, the Canada of tomorrow will in great measure depend on the skill and devotion of its women citizens.